Hello everyone, welcome to HFY Beyond Terror. This channel is all about HFY and sci-fi stories, where humanity's underestimated and then proves...
The quiet station. The storm didn't announce itself. 1 second the sky above. The frozen moon was nothing but a flat gray sheet, still, dull, harmless. The next, it came alive with a shriek that sounded like a wound tearing open. Wind battered the weather station like a fist. The metal walls shuddered and rang. Ice grid hammered the observation window so hard it could have been rocks. Inside, the only movement was Calder Voss's hands. He was older than the station, or at least he felt like it. A man shaped by conflict and then hollowed by it. Most people ran from the edges of the system. Calder had come here on purpose. A place so far from everything that no one would remember him, and he wouldn't have to remember himself. The station was ugly and stubborn, patched panels, mismatched wiring, recycled parts held together by patience and profanity. But it worked. It kept the cold out. It kept hunger away. Most importantly, it kept the universe quiet. Calder tightened a bolt on a heater panel, listening to the storm's howl outside. Then the lights flickered. He stopped immediately. Fingers locked around the tool. The light steadied, then trembled. Again. "Oh, don't you start," he muttered, voice like gravel unused to speaking. He crossed the room and checked the control screen. Power was stable. Shield output was steady. The storm was heavy, but within tolerances. Then he heard it, not the wind. Something underneath the wind. A sound stretched thin and raw, shaped by exhaustion like a call that had been torn apart and stitched back together. Calder straightened slowly. He had learned the sound of wind on this moon. He had listened to it for years. Wind didn't carry pain. The sound came again, closer, sharper, breaking through the storm as if it had teeth. His sensors showed no visitors, no life, no anomalies. The moon was cataloged as barren. The system didn't lie, except it did. Calder moved to the window and wiped frost away with his sleeve. For a moment he saw only swirling white, then dark forms emerged, low to the ground, struggling forward as if the storm itself was trying to drag them back. 5 of them. They moved like wolves, yet wrong in the way alien things were wrong. Longer bodies, heavy forelimbs, thick fur that caught ice like armor. Their eyes glowed faintly in the blizzard, not wild and feral, but focused. One stumbled and fell. Another nudged it, urging it forward. They stopped several meters from the station and did something Calder didn't expect. They lowered their heads. No charge. No snarl. No attempt to flee. A plea. Calder's heart tightened hard enough to hurt. His training screamed at him. Unknown species. Unknown threat. Quarantine protocol. Locked down. Do not engage. His hand hovered over the emergency shutter control. Then one of the creatures collapsed, fully, face first into the ice. Another released a sound, not a warning, but a thin, fading note of desperation. Calder cursed softly. He returned to the console and adjusted the scanner manually, overriding the signal of desperation. Calder cursed softly. He returned to the console and adjusted the scanner manually, overriding the piscuration. Default sweep. Lines of data appeared, faint at first, then clearer. 5 life signatures. Weak, erratic, and unmistakably complex. These weren't animals. Their neural patterns didn't match anything terrestrial. Their brain activity wasn't survival simple. It was layered, thoughtful, intelligent, dying. Outside, the storm deepened. The temperature dropped another degree. The station groaned as ice tried to claim it. Calder closed his eyes, and for a moment he wasn't here. He was somewhere else, standing behind sealed doors, hearing people pound on them, hearing pleading, voices over coms, hearing orders in his own voice telling him not to open them. He opened his eyes and made a decision that felt like a rebellion against every terrible thing he'd ever been taught. The outer gate protested as it slid open, cold. Air knifed in, sharp and aggressive. Frost whipped across the floor. Calder pulled his coat tight and stepped forward into the storm. The wolves lifted their heads. Their eyes locked onto him instantly. No panic. No aggression. Just awareness. Calder raised both hands slowly. Yeezy, he said, though he didn't know why he'd chosen that word. Maybe because it was what you said to frightened soldiers. Or frightened animals. Or frightened parts of yourself. I'm not here to hurt you. His breath clouded the air. He backed toward the open gate and motioned inward. Inside. Now. 4. A long second, nothing moved. Then the largest wolf stepped forward. It walked like each step cost it something. It crossed the threshold and collapsed inside the station. Body shuddering. The others followed, stumbling through the entryway in a silent line. Calder slammed the gate shut. The storm vanished behind. Steel. Warm air filled the room again. For a few breaths. There was only the sound of soft breathing and melting ice. The wolves lay on the station floor in a tight cluster. Frost seeped from their fur, forming dark puddles beneath them. Their eyes remained open, tracking Calder with a calm that made his skin prickle. He moved slowly and retrieved emergency blankets, spreading them over their bodies. One flinched, then relaxed. Calder swallowed. You understand me, he said quietly. More statement than question. The smallest wolf shifted closer to the others. Ears twitching. Calder stepped toward the medical locker. His hands worked without thinking. Old habit, old instinct. He treated frost burns, cracked pads, shallow cuts. Nothing from fighting. Nothing recent. These were wounds from distance, from survival, from a hard journey that had dragged them here by sheer will. And then pressure stabbed behind his eyes. He froze, gripping the edge of the counter as images flashed through his mind. Like lightning, a city carved from ice beneath a blue sky. Tall crystalline spires, wide roads across frozen plains. Wolves, these wolves standing beside towering figures, not as pets but as equals. Guardians at gates. Sentinels at crossings. Then fire. Ships streaking overhead like insects. Screams. Snow. Turning black. Calder staggered. The largest wolf lifted its head and stared straight into him. The pressure eased instantly, as if the creature had reached into his mind and steadied it. Calder's voice came out hoarse. You're not animals. The wolf's gaze didn't waver. If it could have answered, it would have said, we never were. Days turned into rhythm. The storm passed, but Calder didn't sleep. Old habits kept him awake. He watched the door, rifle untouched, the station humming. Softly around them. At some point the smallest wolf crawled closer and rested its head against his boot. Calder stiffened, then slowly let himself breathe. Without thinking, he whispered a name. Nix. It fit like a fragment of something he'd forgotten. When morning came, pale light crept through ice-layered windows. The wolves were still weak, but alive. Calder carried warm water and nutrient paste, setting trays near them. The largest broad-shouldered, scarred sniffed cautiously, then drank. Calder began assigning names so his mind could hold them properly. The leader became Rel Steady, watchful, unshakable. The lean one with the limp became Cyber Alert and calculating. The stubborn one with a shoulder gash became Toke Impatient even while healing. The quiet one became Me Gentle, observant, calm, and the smallest remained Nix, always near Calder, always watching him as if memorizing every breath. Didn't touch his controls. They didn't disrupt his systems. Yet they moved through the station like they understood it. They avoided hazards. They adapted. They learned. Calder tested them carefully. Small puzzles, obstacles, hidden food, altered paths. They solved each one faster than the last. The realization. settled into him like something warm and terrifying. These creatures weren't simply surviving, they were thinking, and they were doing it. Together. Their coordination wasn't trained. It was instinctive. When one felt danger, the other shifted instantly. When one found warmth, the whole pack adjusted. Their bond was so tight it felt like a single mind distributed across 5 bodies. Calder had commanded soldiers before. He'd never seen unity like this. Then came the shimmer beneath the ice. One evening, while Calder repaired the outer generator, the wolves became still. Rel's ears lifted. Siver's stance stiffened. Toke and me pressed close. Nyx stared at them. Far wall like she could see through steel. Calder followed their gaze and went to the window. There beneath the snow, under the ice, was a faint pulsing light. Not natural. Not a reflection. Signal. Calder felt his stomach tighten. Something was there. Something buried or hidden. Or arriving. He logged it for daylight investigation. But sleep never came that night. The next morning, the station awakened itself. A low hum crawled through the air. Rising from a console Calder hadn't activated in years, the long-range communications. Rigged. The screen flickered to life on its own, showing a repeating pulse. Calder's throat went dry. The pattern was old. A military survival code from wars that had been officially forgotten. The kind of signal you only ever heard when something was being hunted. Calder leaned closer. The code was marked with a designation he hadn't seen since his service years. Krenth Trail, a distress call, a beacon, a marker, and it wasn't meant to save someone. It was meant to find them. The wolves stirred behind him as if the console itself was poisoning the air. Calder turned slowly. Rel met his eyes. In that stare was something like recognition, like memory. So the signal wasn't random. It was connected to them. Calder's mind raced. If that code was broadcasting, someone out there knew the wolves had survived. Someone had been waiting for the trail to flare alive. Again. Hunters. Enforcers. The kind that didn't ask questions. He activated external sensors. Nothing visible on the horizon. No ships yet. But deep space didn't need time to deliver consequences. Signals moved faster than storms. Calder exhaled and began preparing. He didn't have much, but he had enough. Old shield generators he'd patched to keep radiation out. Heat camo to make the station look dead from orbit. Dismantled turrets he'd sworn he'd never use again. Traps. Barricades. Every repair pulled him backward into war. The wolves mirrored him quietly, positioning by windows, watching vents, learning his preparations as if they knew what was coming before he did. By nightfall, the station looked abandoned. But inside, it was a fortress. Calder studied the repeating broadcast again and noticed embedded fragments, data packets interwoven with the signal. Memory archives, encoded in bio-format. He accessed them carefully. Holographic images danced across the console. Great icy cities. Crystal towers. Trade routes. Wolves standing alongside strangers, guarding crossings, guiding travelers, keeping peace. Then the fire again. Ships. Mass panic. Systematic destruction. Purge. The wolves watched the holograms with stillness so deep it felt like mourning. Calder understood. They weren't simply fugitives. They were survivors of a genocide. They had been hunted because they refused to serve, because they refused to be weapons. Calder stared at his own reflection in the dark console screen and felt something twist inside him. He had been a weapon once too. He had been used. So had they. When the ships arrived, Calder didn't reach for his rifle. He reached for the truth. The first vessel appeared on the horizon, like a shadow cutting through dawn, sleek, dark, too quiet. It hovered low, scanning. Calder watched the sensors flare. Their systems were advanced. Better than his. If they wanted. They could wipe the station off the ice in seconds, but Calder had prepared one thing they weren't expecting. He initiated a transmission, not an attack, a broadcast. He sent the memory fragments out in a clear, undeniable stream-craft history stitched with human authentication. Proof of what the wolves were. Proof of what had been done to them. Above the ice, a holographic projection bloomed into existence. Cities, guardians, peace, then the betrayal. Calder stepped to the microphone. "This is Calder Voss," he said calmly, voice steady with the authority of old wars. "You're tracking survivors, not threats, not beasts. If you fire, you'll be destroying witnesses to your empire's crimes. Watch their history before you decide what kind of people you are." Silence. The lead ship hovered, scanning the wolves inside the station. The pack stood together, not hostile, not begging, simply present. As if they were saying, "We will not run anymore." Minutes stretched like hours. Then slowly the lead ship powered down its weapons. Another did the same. Then another. The fleet wasn't withdrawing because Calder had defeated them. Were withdrawing because they had been forced to see. Truth had made them hesitate. And hesitation had saved lives. A final transmission arrived from the lead vessel, stripped of arrogance, almost reluctant. Acknowledged. Withdrawal initiated. Calder didn't move for several seconds. Then his shoulders sagged. As if the weight of years finally shifted, Rel approached him and pressed his large head against Calder's chest. Syver leaned into his side. Toke sat close, tense but calm. Me watched quietly, eyes reflecting the fading hologram, and Nyx climbed into Calder's lap without fear, as if she'd always belonged there. Outside, the ice moon returned to silence. But inside the station, silence no longer felt empty. It felt lived in. Months later, the moon wasn't forgotten anymore. Calder stopped counting days. Instead, he measured time by changes in the pack. Rel began exploring beyond the perimeter, marking safe routes. Syver learned the station's patterns as if studying it. Toke grew steadier, less reckless. Me became Calder's shadow, watching everything, noticing what he missed. And Nyx remained endlessly curious, pawing gently at objects, learning the world with bright, patient attention. Then a research vessel arrived. Not hunters, not soldiers, just cautious humans who had heard the broadcast and wanted to see the impossible with their own eyes. Calder stepped outside, the pack behind him in a quiet line. The researchers froze. 5 enormous wolf-like creatures, with glowing eyes, standing calmly beside a human. Calder lifted his hands, not in surrender, but in reassurance. "They're not weapons," he said. "They're survivors. Watch before you judge." And this time, humans listened. Sensors confirmed what Calder already knew. Complex intelligence, coordinated communication, emotional bonding, memory response. The wolves weren't specimens. They were collaborators. The station became a neutral ground, part shelter, part meeting place, part beginning. Word spread slowly, cautiously, like a flame carried through darkness without letting it turn into wildfire. No armies came. No hunters returned. The wolves were no longer prey. They were recognized. Their story wasn't erased anymore. They were finally seen. On a long, pale evening, Calder stood outside with the pack beside him. The sky above the ice moon shimmered, with auroras, ribbons of color spilling over the horizon. The wind was soft. The world was cold, but no longer cruel. Calder looked down at Nyx as she nudged his hand. He had come here to disappear. Instead, he had been found, not by war. Not by duty, but by a family made of strangers, trust, and the quiet decision to open a door when everything in his past told him to keep it shut. The universe was still vast, still dangerous. But for the first time in decades, Calder didn't feel like he was standing alone against it, because beside him were 5 steady bodies, 5 watchful minds, 1 bond, a pact beyond species, a future built from compassion, and place on the coldest moon where warmth existed not just in machines, but in choices.